Hey Ryan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Business Lunch Productions. So away we go, everybody. Welcome back to Getting Figgy with It. You'll understand why in just a minute, Ryan. But we are on the New York Pro Scouts channel. I'm Jesse, and we do this every Monday and Thursday with exciting guests. Today, you're our exciting guest. um, you are Ryan Hockensmith. You're currently deputy editor of ESPN's digital storytelling group. You've been at ESPN since I think 2003 and an internship before that. And you spent a lot of your time covering football and boxing, MMA. Can you introduce yourself to everyone? And given that you've spent your career doing other things, talk about your baseball relationship.
Yeah, thanks. That was a really good intro. Yeah, I grew up playing baseball. I was really good at it when I was younger, and the older I got, the less good I became. So I played all the way up through high school, and then I stopped playing as a senior in high school. I played tennis for a year before I went off to college, and I always loved the game. I think we'll talk about a story I wrote recently about my baseball card collection. I just always, when I think about why did I love baseball the way that I did, especially when I was a kid, and I think part of it is that it's such a nice, neat, tidy, organized sport. I cover football, and we're still like 50 years away from figuring out what a catch is, right? Um, the pass interference rule got shot down, I think, today. So it won't be back. It was like this thing we badly needed. We got to have it, and we had it
Yeah.
for a year, and everybody's like, I hate that. Baseball, I know there's replay and there's some, strike zone complaints and things like that. But man, the game you watched in 1930 is like not that different than what you see in 2020. And there's a certain beauty to that. And as a kid, I think I really, being a kid is hard. Being a teenager is just, your life is constantly, she broke up with me. My life is over. I'm not talking to this guy. I got suspended from school. I had a divorce. My parents got divorced. And through it all, baseball was like this nice through line that just, it all made sense. It was neat and organized with tidy statistics. And my baseball cards, Topps was going to have 792 cards. I knew that every year. So I was always drawn to that. I think I really liked that part of the sport.
That's, I think, a beautiful thing and totally relatable, which, like you said, we'll get to in a minute. So before we go further, there are some fun, inventive names for minor league teams. There's a company that actually helps name minor league teams. And so we've got the Hartford Yard Goats, Scranton Rail Riders, I think they're now called, and the State College Spikes. So we let our guests name the show, kind of like that. So John Franco called it the Duke Show because he played for the Dukes in the minor leagues. Nelson Figueroa just called it Getting Figgy with It. It had a great run, but what do you think we should call the show?
So I was thinking about 60 minutes of sadness because I think that's how people are going to feel at 9:00 today. But instead of that, how about 60 minutes of dadness? Dadness. Because
I
I'm
like that a lot.
I am a huge I'm like a dad bod goofy guy who has never done Instagram live and barely knows what it is. Um, so like I think 60 minutes of dadness, that's, you'll probably feel like very overly dadded up by the end of this.
That's a great title and definitely one of the more original ones we've had. um, so let's jump into it and let's see how dad we get. So you've been with ESPN now on staff, like I said, since '03. You had that internship, so you've been there for like 20 years. What has it been that's kept you, most of the journalists we have, they've worked for different entities. So why have you stayed at ESPN? What's kept your fire going for that long?
Yeah, I went to Penn State and I graduated in August of 2001, and I drove right to ESPN to start an internship at the magazine in New York City. And I'll tell you, I've had some opportunities at other places, and I have tons of friends across all different parts of the media. And I mean, Disney and ESPN is a part of Disney. It's just an awesome company. It's
Do
just
you get
like,
discounts for the kids?
yeah, I mean, we get into the parks. Like I can walk in the parks with
Nice.
four guests anytime.
There's your
Um,
dad. Check the dad box. We should have a
oh,
ticker.
totally dad box. 35% off at the Disney store. I mean, the dad box #2 there. It's just like a really great company, like we'll probably get into this a little bit, but like I've had some significant health setbacks over the years, and that's a hard thing for a company to have an employee with the sort of, I had to take so much time off and so many surgeries, and any progress I was making got halted a few times, and they stuck with me the whole time.
Wow.
I had friends come and like literally carry me up the steps of my apartment in Queens, and it's just, I love it. I love it. And at this point, it doesn't matter anyway. My kids and my wife we love Disney. We love the parks. We love Disney Channel. We love Disney Plus. So I'm a total shill, and I'm proud of it. It's been great.
That's awesome. So as far as like what you've covered over the years, how has that changed and how have you grown in your role there?
It's one of the reasons like I really enjoy my job is because it has tremendous flexibility. Like I get to work on all sorts of different stuff. My primary areas are college football, NFL, MMA, and boxing. Those have been my primary areas for a very long time. And I remember, I'm very proud to say, like in the early 2000s, the UFC was this thing, like, it was called many things by many politicians and banned in a lot of states. And all along, I just felt like, first of all, I like the athletes. I mean, they are an open book. And I wrestled. I love amateur wrestling. I love college wrestling. And a lot of these guys that I grew up with wrestling or following ended up in the UFC. And so I knew what it took. I know what kind of blueprint, what kind of DNA it takes to be that high level of a wrestler, and to get to the UFC then is a whole other level. So I gravitated toward that. So in the early 2000s, I mean, access was incredible. You got to hang out with, I remember Dana White just bringing a bunch of fighters into the office. I remember like I was sort of making fun of the idea of leg kicks. I was like, why would you bother with a leg kick? Like, strike, go for submissions, maybe a double leg. Like, what's a leg kick? And Dana White said, hey, Chuck Liddell, like one of the great light heavyweights of all time. He's like, hey, give him like a 10% leg kick. And I remember standing at the elevators at the ESPN magazine office, and Chuck Liddell, it just looked like he was sort of flicking a flyway with his foot.
That's amazing.
And he kicked me in the leg, and I was like, oh my God, like, how do you guys do this? It hurt so bad. And it just, what it does to your leg is it really inflicts the kind of damage that it makes it hard to move then. And so I was like, okay, I get it. But that was the sort of access that you got around fighters, and I love being around them. So I have gravitated toward that and stayed around it. I just really appreciate those guys. But along the way, I've gotten to do all sorts of, if you find some of my old bylines and stuff, I've gotten to do some really
Secretariat, right? All of the streets named after Secretariat.
Yeah, we're doing this awesome project. That was part one, but part two's coming up. But we tried to answer the question, what athlete has the most roads named after him? And the answer was a horse. Secretariat has 263 roads named after him in the United States. So there's about 5 in every state. There's some states with 20 Secretariat roads. God. Secretariat Avenue, Secretariat Boulevard, you name it. I'll tell you one project that I was just looking at the other day that I did it in maybe like 2009. You'll get a kick out of this because it involved memorabilia. My mom was like, when are you going to get all your crap out of my house? And so I went
Every mom's favorite question.
I know, right? We've all been asked that. Get these cards out of here. So I went home, and one of the things I found was this autograph book. I used to love writing letters to athletes and hoping to send self-addressed stamped envelopes. And I remember for Christmas one year, my mom actually gave me a box of 500 envelopes with my name and address already in the return email. Wow. Not email, return address spot. And so I wrote letters like crazy, and I had all these correspondence with athletes over the years when I was a kid. So in 2008 or 9, I thought, I wonder if athletes still do that, right? So I got a P.O. box that ESPN paid for, and I used a fake name, and I sent this very general note. It just said, "Dear Miguel Cabrera, I'm a huge baseball fan. Could I have your autograph?" And then I signed it with this fake name. And I sent out about, I think it was 450 of them.
Oh, my God.
To all 4 major sports. The best player on each team, like the 25th man on every baseball roster, the mascot, and the coach for every team. And when you know it, I got about 100 different things back in the mail. All kinds of cool stuff. And it ended up being a cover story for ESPN magazine. And we used that project to name Joe Mauer, great catcher for the Twins, as the most fan-friendly athlete in sports, because he sent me this typed out postcard with his autograph on it. And it had a very personal note. Like, I think I used the name Joe Fan, Phan, Joe Fan. And it said, "Dear Joe, thank you so much for your note. It's been a long winter here in Minnesota. I hope it's warmer and where you're from, blah, 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 blah." And it was just like a really nice personal touch. And when I called the Twins and I told them that I did this project, they said, "Wow, that's really funny. You know, Joe Mauer actually hired someone to just help him respond to every note. He responds to everyone personally, but he hired a person to do it for him."
Wow.
And it turns out the person he hired was his mom. They were struggling they were struggling to find time together during the baseball season. So he said, "Hey, Mom, would you come over for like 4 hours a week and help me go through every single autograph request that I get?" And she would type up all the responses. And it was like this beautiful mom-son thing that
I'm putting this on the dad counter. This is a check for a dad story.
Yeah, we're gonna make this if there's a meter, it's gonna be blinking red soon. But so yeah, that was a long rambling way of saying ESPN has been very open-minded about, like, it's not as simple as like you just cover the sport and that's all you do. So that's part of the reason I love it. It's just a great place to work. It took tremendous freedom.
And as someone said in the comments, my friend Matt, Joe Mauer is actually one of my favorite players of all time. I would draft Joe Mauer first round fantasy draft every year. He seems like the nicest guy. He was such a great player. I mean, and then that story puts it over the top for me. So
totally. I mean, I fell in love with the guy. He was great.
So we're going to do another question in a second, but people seem to know it's about Penn State. So before we do that, 2 audience questions. Favorite ice cream at Penn State Creamery?
Man, I never really liked the Creamery. It was always a zoo, and I just didn't. I guess I'll say Peachy Paterno because it's unique, kind of. But yeah, they almost revoked my Penn State degree when I say, like, I'm fine without ever going to the Creamery. Sorry, everybody. I'm sorry.
And then another, I guess, Penn State question. What did you study in college?
I was a journalism major. Journalism. I knew I wanted to be an athlete when I was a kid. I really wanted to be an athlete. And I had a bunch of injuries. I just wasn't that good, you know, and I had I was okay wrestler, and I thought about going to like a Division III school because I got some offers of some assistants to go wrestle, but I wanted to go party. I wanted to go to a big school. So I went to Penn State, but at that point, like toward the end of my high school career, I realized, like, I really want to cover sports. I want to be around them. And I'll never forget, I heard a high school commencement speaker. It wasn't my high school commencement, but he said that he cited this study that has since I found out isn't real, but it's real to me. That said 80% in a study, 80% of people who wrote down a specific goal every day for a year achieved that goal. And so I started writing down that I wanted to be a staff writer at Sports Illustrated by the time I was 27. And I landed at ESPN at age 22, and I realized that's what I wanted. So
that's amazing.
It helped to write that down and have that specific goal every day. So I knew when I went to Penn State, like, I'm going to be a journalist. I want to do this.
You're making that study a reality. It sounds believable to me. Let's be honest.
Well, like, there's like parts of it that have been found to be true, which is that, like, by writing down a specific thing, it's constantly in your head. It makes it more real. So, like, I don't know. I've done it other times where I say I want to lose 10 pounds in the next 3 months, and when you write it down every day, you think twice about that 4th donut. You know, you stick with 3. You stick with 3. Keep that dad bod.
Dad counter, that's another one.
Yeah.
So you were going to Penn State, and you were in the middle of an amazing run as a sports journalist. Kind of cool because they had a great football team. This was 1999. 6 wins to open the season. You were at a game between them and Illinois, and you were going into the locker room. And then some things happened that changed your life. So can you talk a little bit about what happened to you?
Yeah, I went and I didn't feel well for a day or two out there. 5 of us drove 12 hours from State College out to Champaign in a car we left on Friday and we came back on Sunday. 12 hours in a car, even for a college kid, I mean, it's a long trip. And so drove out there, didn't feel that well, covered the game, but I was dragging. But I went down afterwards. I interviewed both teams, players from both teams, and I wrote a story for our school website. And when I went back to the hotel, I just was really not feeling well. And I saw some like purple blotches on my arm that I thought, boy, that's just like, I thought maybe I had the flu, but like the flu, that's not normal for the flu. So I went to the hospital. They gave me some IV fluids. I felt better. And I don't think the purple blotches were as, I don't know if they subsided or what, but I felt better. I wanted to get out of there. So I went back to the hotel room, slept overnight, and got in the car the next day. And then, oh my God, we started driving back. And an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours into the trip, I realized like I am not doing well, and I felt serious. I had pain all over, my head hurt, neck hurt, but it's like we were just like in the middle of the country, college kids, and I was like, what am I gonna have them do? Like drop me off at a hospital just by myself? So I thought I'm just gonna gut it out. So I gutted it out for the 12 hours. But by the time we got back to Pennsylvania, we didn't have cell phones at the time, so my colleagues, they called an ambulance. They had an ambulance waiting for me, and they threw me in the ambulance. And I remember my girlfriend at the time, her name was Lori. She came with me. She was in the ambulance with me, got over to the hospital, and my mom arrived a little while later. She rushed across the state. And I just remember looking at both of them, and I mean, I was so in love with Lori. And then I appreciate my mom she was a great mom. And I just thought, I'm dying. And how do I say goodbye to these people? And before I even got a chance to figure out those last words to say to them, to let them know how much I appreciate them, I was in a coma. I spent a week in a coma, turned 22 years old while I was in a coma. Penn State, I woke up and Penn State was losing their first game of the season. And yeah, my life was never going to be the same. I had bacterial meningitis, which is a deadly, I mean, look it up, it is a potentially deadly disease. You have like a day, maybe less, before you're dead. And it destroyed my hands and feet. My hands ended up being okay, but my feet I've had multiple amputations. I had bones sticking out of my feet. It was a brutal setback. You know, I was 22 years old and I spent 6 months in a wheelchair. I had to drop out of school. I never thought, there were times where I just thought I'm never going to be close to the same. I'm just never going to be the same. And it took a lot of hard work. I really was a struggle. But I'm proud to say I got back to school the next year as a senior. I just did the last credits I needed to do. Lori and I were still together, so we had a great senior year. And, you know, one of the most amazing parts of my life is Lori and I are together to this day. We stayed together.
Amazing too.
If you can imagine how hard it is to get to like a third Tinder date, you know, with someone before the wheels come off and you realize it's hard to stay together. Think about being in your early 20s, like, and you know, there were no guarantees I was ever going to be the same. My last amputation surgery, they cut the ends of both feet off. I lost all 10 toes. And so I had these tiny little feet. I have a 5-year-old daughter who has bigger feet than I do. And like, when you're 22, 23 years old staring at that, like, do I want this for my whole life? That's a big commitment. Like, I mean, I tell my wife this and we laugh about it, but I don't know if I'm lying when I say it. I said, like, if this happened the other way around, I don't know that I was strong enough I think I would have kicked your ass to the curb. But we joke around about it. But I do wonder, like, how many people when that hits you are gonna stick with it? You know, there's like the smallest things can disrupt a relationship, let alone, wow, my husband's never gonna. I was in a wheelchair for a long time, and there was no guarantees I was ever going to get out of the wheelchair. You know, that's how bad my feet were. And so, I mean, we've had an amazing love story, but it took a lot to get back, even back to school and get my degree. It took a lot.
And she made you what? She made you a dad. So I think that also is another, that's a dad counter.
Ding.
There.
Yes.
Ding.
Someone was counting. I saw that.
Yeah, we got someone counting. This is perfect. So I think this is amazing. I read when you came out of the coma, your grandparents were there. And in order to see if you were with it, your grandpa started peppering you with sports questions. And then your first thing you wanted to know from the doctors was, would you be able to run and when? Like, when could you run again? Talk about the impact that sports has clearly had on your life. I mean, that's the first thing on your mind and your family's mind.
Yeah, it's funny, you know. I sometimes have mixed feelings about sports because I've poured my life into them, and like at the end of the day, are they that important? You know, I have kids now. I'm a dad, uh, and so
Sticks.
it's like, oh, is that game really? It's not the biggest game ever. Like they're just gonna do it again tomorrow night. But sports have been like a thread that connects me with so many people over the years, and it's just such a. And now that we haven't had live sports, you really see that there's parts of people's lives, places, sports can be such a safe place, and it was always a really strong bonding thing for me with my family, especially my grandfather, and um, I don't remember the specific sports questions he was asking me, and it's funny now that I think back on it that he was like, let me test the depths of his awareness about the world by
Is it weird
asking
if
him.
I help you with the question? Because I read it. He asked you who Kurt Warner was the quarterback of.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I guess he was probably the Rams then, right? 99.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I didn't remember the specific question. Yeah, but it's amazing that that's what he thought. Like, it wasn't like, what's your mom's maiden name or anything
Right.
like that. He's like, what number did Pedro Guerrero wear, whatever. And, yeah, so sports were really, and geez, after I was sick, I mean, it was dark days after I got sick. I mean, I had to do this thing called debridement, which is I had 50 different wounds on my feet, and every day I had to take a piece of gauze for each one of those wounds and soak it in saline solution, and then stick it on each one of those wounds and let it dry all day or all night, 12 hours. And then the goal, debridement, meant to rip off as much as I could, and it was terrible. It was so painful, and it wasn't even one of those things where they say like, hey, clench your teeth, I'm about to give you a shot. I had to do it to myself, and it was so painful and it was agonizing. I remember I used to just get in the shower and just cry. I was in so much pain, and I was breaking down. But boy, sports offered like this glimmer of it gave me something to be excited about even in those dark days. So, from the best times of my life to the worst times, like sports has never gone anywhere. It probably never will. It's going to be that way for me.
It's the constant. I mean, you were talking about baseball, how there's that constant and the rules and the structure. It's that same thing. So, how did you end up finishing Penn State and transitioning to ESPN after all that happened?
Yeah, I went back for my senior year, and I didn't have that much schoolwork. I mean, I went back. I had some credits to take care of, but for the most part, I was going back and just going. I just had to check off a couple boxes of classes. They were really easy, but it was more of like an interesting year to try to figure out if I could, like, if I was ready to be an adult, And I don't mean just that I'm an immature moron in general, but throw in the like getting around. I mean, just sometimes I can walk about if I wake up and I'm in a good place, even now, years later, I can make it about a football field before I have to really sit down. So, when I was like going to football games, or you go out to a busy bar, and I had to figure out like what am I capable of, and that year was really good for me to be able to figure that out. And I didn't go back to work for the student newspaper, and I ended up taking this class that was designed to write bigger profiles. And the goal was to try to enter some stories from that class in a national awards competition called the Hearst Awards. And Penn
Mm-hmm.
State hadn't had somebody qualify for the Hearst Awards in a long time. And I was the first person, I think it was 35 years,
Wow.
to qualify. I wrote two stories, one about Jay Paterno and one about my own bout with meningitis. And I qualified, so I got to go out to San Francisco. It was a cool thing. You had to write three stories. I was one of 8 finalists, and we each got the same 3 assignments over 3 days. They'd tell you
Really?
in the morning what your assignment was, and then you would go compete. And it was a lot like a sporting event. And I did okay. There was some really, I mean, it was like 8 really good reporters and writers from across the country. So it was steep competition. And but I wore out. We had to go to this fair and cover this fair all day. And I had to stop halfway through, and I just went back to the hotel. I was just sitting there my feet were killing me. So I was at a little bit of a disadvantage there, but it was a crowning achievement just to have qualified for it and go out to San Francisco and have a good time and give it a shot. I think I finished 4th out of 8. So like, that's about right. I'm right there in the middle. I'm middle of the pack on most things. So yeah, it was nice to go back and get my degree. And along the way, one of the cool things about Penn State is that it's a big school with lots of alums doing very cool, successful things. And I met a guy, JB Morris, he went to Penn State a few years before me, and he advocated for me to get an internship and became my first boss. And that's how
cool.
I got latched on at ESPN. Yeah, Penn State connection.
How about that? You know Sweeney Murdy?
I've met him a couple of times. It's been a long time, though. I don't know if he remembers me or not.
Another Penn
Yes.
State guy. He's
Yeah.
part of our organization.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
I like Sweeney.
And then we got connected through another Penn State connection. So it must have worked out pretty well.
Yeah, we're everywhere.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say we're everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Surrounded
That's
by Penn Staters. Yeah.
So that, among other reasons, is why we're talking right now. So you mentioned it before. You wrote this pretty cool article about your childhood with baseball cards and that whole experience. We shared that earlier for people to check out. I had just done a show with the Cubs hitting coach. We were talking about, being in quarantine and just the crazy amount of baseball cards we had. And what's weirder when you're in sports is looking at them and being like, I know this guy, or I met that guy. So it's like a surreal experience. Talk about the article that you wrote. Talk about what was going through your head and the impact, I guess, that's had on people.
Yeah, I actually wrote it in 2018, and it was so bad that we didn't know what to do with it. I tried to. I mean, it ran at probably 2,500 words in 2020. About a month ago, and I wrote the original draft. It was probably 7,500 words, and I tried to do a lot of things in the story. One was just sort of outline what happened to the industry, and I talked to lots of people from Upper Deck and experts and everything. And I interspersed that with my personal story, which is, it started because my wife was like, hey, we're moving. This was April of 2018. We're moving. What are you going to do with all those cards? And I knew the bottom. I'm not going to pretend like I didn't know the bottom had fallen out of the sports card industry. But I have tons of Michael Jordans and Ken Griffey Jr.'s and just Kevin Garnett. These are Hall of Famers, right? So I thought, well, that card, it was worth $50. It's probably only worth like 10 now, right? And so then I got price guides, and yeah, sure enough, some of these cards, they were worth $8, $12, $15. But when I started reaching out, I reached out to 10 different dealers. I tried mail, I tried calls, I showed up in person. Nobody's buying any of this. All those Kevin Garnetts that say in a price guide they're worth $20, they all there's so many of them that they're just not really a real price. So I ended up not getting a single. Like, no one was interested. I even tried to auction them off where it's free. You just put them up for auction, describe what they are, and if they sell for $400 or $100, the auction house takes $10 from it or whatever the cut was. And they were just like, yeah, we don't bother with any of those 80s or 90s cards. And I was like, you don't even have any risk involved in this. But they wouldn't do it. So here I am with all these cards, and now I have to figure out what to do with them. And I was sort of paralyzed. Like, they weren't worth anything, but they meant a lot to me. And you alluded to this a little bit ago, but like, sometimes people ask me like, hey, how old are you? And I'm like, I have to think about, 42, that's right. But if you ask me, hey, what year did Mickey Hatcher have a giant glove on his hand? I can name the brand and the card and everything. Actually, can I? I think that was 86 Fleer. But anyway, I can, the Billy Ripken era card.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I can be transported back to specific moments in my life, even 30 years ago. I remember like the temperature when I was at a card show at Camp Hill Mall in Pennsylvania, when the Bo Jackson score card came out. If you don't know what it is, it's this beautiful black and white card. We thought they were short printed when they first came out, and he was like a sensation. And so it was this bonanza for my brothers and I, hustling around trying to get this Bo Jackson card. And getting it, I remember that the first day of the card show, we made my parents go every day. Every day. My dad must have just been like, I give up, man. So I remember the first day, the market was kind of like $5 for the Bo Jackson card. Well, in 24 hours, it was like you could sell them to dealers for $10, and the dealers were selling them for 20. And I remember by the end of the weekend, there was some places that they were selling for like $30, and
Oh
it
my
had
God.
started as 5. And so you saw these like ebbs and flows. It was very exciting, and the idea that I could tell that to you, that was 1990. And I don't quite remember what I had for lunch today. Like, there's something about cards that just evoke such memories for me. And so I found all my cards, and I didn't know what to do with them. So we moved. It was April something 2018. We moved into our new house, and that day was just torrential downpours. And I went out to get lunch for the movers, and when I came back, the fire company was at my house because our whole basement flooded. We had been in the house for like 90 minutes. And of course, all my cards, like I'd say half of my collection was floating in this water. And the fire department was like, we're pretty sure that's sewer water that
Oh
backed
boy.
up. So I had I had crappy cards literally floating in crap water, maybe. It turned out not to be sewer water, but my collection was like ruined. And then I was really like, what do I do? I lost half my collection. I had to throw all those cards out. And so anyway, I wrote a story about my experience, and it just didn't land. It just didn't quite work. It was trying to do 10 different things. So I got good feedback from my editors, and then I just didn't know what to do with it. One of the biggest things that we wrestle with is like, when do you tell a story? You want to try to find that right moment. It's like putting a pinch hitter in baseball. Like, sure, maybe the second inning, the guy would probably be a good chance of getting a hit, but it's like, is it the right situation? And so I just sat with it. And one day during the quarantine, I was scooping litter boxes downstairs. I was down there to just get away from my family, if I'm being honest. I'm around a lot of people. We love each other very, very much. We just don't like each other all the
Didn't
time.
you say in the article that your daughter was like, can you just give me some space, your 5-year-old?
No, I remember I walked down and I said, is there something that I can get you for lunch? And she said, yeah, how about some peace and quiet?
Oh my
And I was
God.
like, damn, she's 5. And she was in Elsa pajamas at like 5:15 in the evening or
This is
something.
dad counter for sure.
Yeah, totally. So I just wrote about how, like, baseball. I would go down I still right now can go down into the basement and sit there by my old Beckett's and my cards and just feel like a little, just 1% more calm and peaceful and organized. And I hope it didn't come off like a grandfather, because I'm just a dad. I'm not a grandfather yet.
Right.
But I hope it didn't come off like, get off my lawn. But like, I do look at my kids, and they're on their phones, they're on their gadgets all the time, and they actually don't have very much stuff. Like, they don't actually have, like, Snapchat isn't going to do for them what like that Bo Jackson scorecard did for me. And like, I kind of was like, I spent some time in the story just sort of bummed out about that, right? Like, we're probably saving a lot of trees by not having 150,000 cards in everybody's basement these days. But like, I did wonder, like, are my kids getting the same things they can sit with and hold and enjoy, that I did? And so I ended up, I kept my collection. They're not worth, it's like not worth anything. When I wrote the story, man, it just took off in a way that just blew my mind. I got correspondence from all over the world. I wrote a lot about my favorite player, Pedro Guerrero, and you should go read the story. I won't ruin the beginning, but the first card I remember is a Pedro Guerrero card that was given to me by my guidance counselor during like some of the worst days of my life, toughest days of my life. And so I write the story, I publish it, and like immediately Pedro Guerrero's agent reaches out and is like, I got to get you
No
with Pedro.
way.
You and Pedro, we got to get you together. And he said, at least give me your address. I want to send you an autograph. So sure enough, I just got it the other day.
That's so
It's just this personalized autograph. It's a beautiful picture.
the
So
crazy part is it was written by Joe Mauer's mom.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, Pedro hired. Yeah, totally. So yeah, the story just kind of it found its moment with the quarantine. And geez, I just didn't even think there's so many people, grown up kids now like me that are whatever, 35 to 50 years old, and they have kids now, and they have like these really worthless baseball cards in their basement, and they can't get rid of them either. Um, so it struck a chord. It's really a common thread, I think, between a lot of people my age. It's kind of a cool
100%.
thing. Yeah.
And younger up until a certain point. And it is kind of sad when you look at it because we all had these really incredible, tangible experiences, and it was, probably like 100 years of history, people having the same thing. And hopefully, I know Tops is doing digital stuff now, but it's not quite the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, it was a really personal piece. So, what was that like for you? And, why do you feel so comfortable writing? Or, I mean, you've been through some crazy stuff. Why do you feel comfortable putting that in? And, from an advice perspective for aspiring, we have kids who tune into this. What can you tell them about that in your writing?
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard to figure out how far I wanted to go and how honest I wanted to be. And I don't know what it is about being at home recently, but I just have felt more emboldened to kind of take chances and put it out there. And I mean, I tried to I mean, I tried to really put put it out there, like there was some painful stuff in there, and I sent it to everybody in my family, and it they all loved it, but like there were definitely passages where like I talked more openly with my parents about our divorce than like I remember ever having done so before. And I didn't get too much into this, but like my parents, they got married when they were 17 or 18, and they were divorced by early 20s, and they had three boys, and the marriage fell apart. And it's just like, I'm thinking about, like, I was like doing keg stands when I was like 28, like the idea that I would have had like a 10-year-old kid like my mom did, like, oh my God, they did an amazing job. They both got remarried a couple years later, and they've been with their spouses ever since.
Wow.
And so, yeah, they did. Like, they found their true loves. It's actually a beautiful thing. And so, but like they read it, and it was like it was a little hard because I think the best writing kind of puts something on the line. There's a cost. You realize the tension within a piece, and I think I tried to do that in a fair way, and I asked them if they had any input on it, and my family was just like, nope, go for it. And I shared the story. I mean, the end of the story, I shared the story with my daughter when it was like 95% done, and I mentioned in there the thing that I said earlier, which is like, I don't know that Snapchat and TikTok are giving them what price guides and baseball cards did to me. And my daughter was like, her response was something like, she's 14. She was like, I really like the story, but hey, can I get TikTok? And and I was like,
That's a dad counter.
that wasn't really the takeaway I was aiming for. But I wrote in the story, I mean, we're going to cave on TikTok. We probably will. And at this time in the course of human history, like, if that's what makes my daughter feel a little more comfortable in the world, if it does provide to her what, you know, 1989 Upper Deck baseball cards did for me, then like we're probably going to cave in and give it to her. But
That's awesome. So we have another audience question. Uh, this is, do you have any plans to write a book?
uh, no, but I have thought about it. I have thought that there's some. I've lived this life, and so it doesn't feel like extraordinary in any ways. But like, I do have some friends that have published books and are in the publishing industry who are like, "Hey, you should think about it." Um, I actually have a few more pieces coming down the road in the next couple of weeks that are personal essays that I think will even shed some more light on some of the ups and downs of my life. I can't. My editors are still raking me over the coals a little bit about some things, so like, I don't want to spoil anything. But like, it does make me feel like I wonder if I have something to say. I'll give you a little hint. Is just that I laugh and I smile. I have a good life. I try to find the positive in everything. But like I have chronic pain. I've had and chronic pain is like I'm working on a story about chronic pain, and I hitched up with an athlete who has it, who I find to be very inspirational and optimistic about the world. And that is saying something, because I described chronic pain in the story that my editors are nitpicking right now. I describe it in the story. It's like having we all have that one like kind of toxic friend who's always just whispering. We love them, but like they're telling us stuff all the time that like no matter what kind of day you had, it gets a little worse.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yes, I know. It's like the old Debbie Downer skit on Saturday Night
Yes,
Live where
yes,
it's like,
Rachel.
yeah, I won the lottery, and it's like 90% of lottery
Wah,
winners
wah.
or have cancer within 3 years. And, we all, that's what chronic pain is. And chronic pain means it doesn't go away. So it's like having a toxic friend at your side at all times. It's impossible to no matter how happy I've ever been in my life, there's this like voice in my head saying, oh my God, you got to sit down. Your feet are killing you. And so I have a piece coming up that I hope it illuminates that. There's 50 million Americans that have what is diagnosed as chronic pain. That's about 20% of all adults. So there's a lot of people out there, and being quarantined has actually had the reverse of what I thought it would on me. I thought like, oh, I'll put my feet up, I'll watch Ozark. I've been wanting to watch Ozark for a while. And so you do that, and for 3 days it's great. And my pain levels dropped pretty far down. But man, you start to get lethargic and you start to feel like not alive, even though your feet don't hurt as much. Like I felt just like I was rotting inside, and I miss connecting to the world and connecting to people. And I mean, there's people in this world, there's people in my life that I haven't hugged in a long time. And every time I do, I feel like a little bit better about the world when I'm in their presence. And I haven't had that. Zoom is great, but it's not quite the same,
Right.
And so I'm missing that. And so I'm writing about that in this piece. So I think that's also something that I think um, I'm learning is like, I didn't think of it as like unique, very unique, but it is like a different life than most people have led. So I feel like I have something to say about that. We'll see. I don't know about the book. We'll see. At the end of 60 minutes of Dadness, you let me know if you,
We'll
if you think
decide.
there's
We'll decide if it's worth it.
it might just be bad dad jokes.
So, speaking of jokes, you got into stand-up comedy as an admitted midlife crisis.
Totally.
Could you talk about that? And then, if you're willing, tell us a joke that's done well for you, and then one that has just totally bombed.
Okay. Man, the list of jokes that have bombed. Oh my God. I mean, comedy can be like the saddest hobby
Yeah.
because I mean, I've gone places where there's like not a single person. Like you're just standing at a microphone by yourself. There's a couple other comedians, but it's just you talking to the wall. And it's like, this is my Friday night. Like, but yeah, so I started doing it because in 2018, I just was telling my friend like that, I joke around about midlife crisis, but like there is a point probably in almost every human's life where they look up and they have lots of responsibility, and there's all these things they always thought I'll give someday I'm going to do that. Someday, yeah, I'm going to live in Paris for 3 months. Someday I'm going to buy that, or I'm going to go to this place. And you look up and you got a couple kids and a car payment, and you realize like that's going to be really hard to do. And my brain was whispering, I'm never going to be able to do that. And I had this big long list. I was going to do stand-up comedy. I always thought like I'm moving to New York at age 22. Like there's open mics like all the time, everywhere,
Totally.
comedy clubs. It's the best place on earth probably to start to try stand-up. And I didn't do it a single time, not once. And in 2018, I was telling my friend like, yeah, I'm never going to get to do that. I'm never going to get this. I need to get a motorcycle. I need to get my nipples pierced or something. And he was like, why? What are you talking about? Like you can do stand-up comedy. Why can't you? You're telling yourself that you gave up. And sort of as like an FU, I was like, you know what, I'm doing it, and I got an opportunity at this awesome comedy club to walk on stage in October of 2018 for the first time. I bombed horribly. I mean, it was like 100 people in the crowd. They all
Wow.
paid like $20. I brought 6 people, and I just was like a nervous wreck up there. And I just part of what I've noticed, like I'm not very good. I'm not good. I'm not good at all. Like it's an art. It's like so the best people have this. They have this incredible combination of material and then the performance ability, like to actually, like, you can't just go up and say stuff. You have to like perform it. So like a weird look or whatever, next time you're watching your comedian that you like, you'll notice it now that there's things that people do with their mouth and their hands and stuff that bring it to life in a way. I just get up there and I just start saying, so the other day my kid walked in, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes, like, I remember the first time I I had 5 minutes, and I practiced it, I don't know, 100 times, more than 100 times. And I timed it every time, and I was right at 5 minutes, maybe 5:15. And I remember before I went on stage the first time, the guy said, hey, I know it's your first time. With a minute left, so 4 minutes in, I'm going to shine a light. That's your cue that you have 1 minute, that you should wind it down. He goes, hey, don't make the rookie mistake of just like walking off stage when you see the light. You still have a minute. So I'm up there, I'm performing, and I'm basically at the end, but I'm not quite done. And I see the light, and I was like, all right, thanks everybody, good night. And I walked off stage at 4 minutes. And it was a total rookie panic move. But it just felt awesome to give it a shot. And I've been doing it ever since. I haven't done it for the last couple months. But it feels really cool to, like, I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt who said, like, once a week, make sure you do something that scares you, and it feels good to do something. I still get scared when I go up there. I'll tell you, I'm not going to tell you specific jokes because it uses some swear words, but I will tell you one of the most fascinating things that I discovered is that, like, potty humor, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
It is so hit or miss that you can't do it.
Really?
Like, the thing about doing comedy is, like, the crowds are so unexpected. Like, I don't have a following. None, like, most of the people at my level just don't have a huge following. So you're not guaranteed that you're going to have, like, a certain demographic that you're working with. When there's a lot of people that are funny out there that think they're funny, and I'll include me in it, who make people laugh all the time, but they're a lot of family, a lot of friends, a lot of people with similar socioeconomic backgrounds, college educated, similar age. So, like, you learn how to make your work colleagues.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yes, and they have to laugh at you, right, dude? You get up in front of these crowds where there's, like, one night I looked out and I was like, oh my god, there's 10 people who are 22 years old, and then there's like 15 who are 62 years old. What would they be laughing at that's the same?
Yeah.
Like the 62-year-olds aren't on TikTok. I can't talk about that. And the 22-year-olds don't want to hear about me taking my mother-in-law to Chick-fil-A or whatever. So, and potty humor is it's just so hit or miss. You just never know. I find it hilarious. I've done the same potty jokes, blowing up the bathroom, I won't get into it, but, like, and it'll kill. And then the next day you do it and it's terrible. And I've learned to just stay away from that. Cause it's like a guaranteed, coin flip of whether you bomb that night or not. So
It's
I stay
Russian
away
roulette.
from that. I'll tell you the joke that I think has worked the best sort of across audiences is, I'll just tell you, my wife and I don't get to go out very much, but a year or two ago, we got a babysitter and we went to a movie together, and it was great. Like, the movie was fantastic, and Blake Lively was in the movie. And coming out of the theater, I said to him, I was raving a little bit too much about Blake Lively. Like, I was like, oh, she's charismatic and good looking, and oh, she's the total package. And my wife kind of rolled her eyes and she said, I guess I know who your hall pass is. And I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. I don't think like that at all, unless you're cool with it. Like, can I pencil in Blake Lively? And she laughed. And then I said, we've actually never had this conversation in 20 years together. We've never talked about hall passes. I said, who would your hall pass be? she said, well, I don't have one. And I said, listen, I wrote down Blake Lively. Like, it's totally happening. You might as well give me somebody's name. And she thought about it for a minute. And she finally said, well, I really like John Lyons. And I was like, who is John Lyons? And she said, well, he's this really accurate local weather guy. And I was like, do you care that much about the weather? And she said, oh my God, his 5-day forecast is to die for. So yes, I do care about the weather. And I was like, okay. Well, I guess I like to know if this guy's nailing the weather, I would like to know what the weather is going to be too. So which TV station can I find this guy on? And she was like, well, he's not really like a professional weatherman. Like, he just posts his forecasts to Facebook.
Oh God.
And I was like, thought about it for a second, and I finally was like, so I went with the hottest actress in Hollywood, who I'm never going to meet. And you picked a freelance weather guy from across town? And she said, yes. And that's when I was like, I'm pretty sure my wife's having an affair with some guy named John Lyons.
That's awesome.
That joke usually works.
That's a great one. I am not shocked that it does. So we're at the part of the show where I do rapid fire. So I'm going to give you some things. You tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Favorite athlete growing up?
Pedro Guerrero, Dodgers slugger.
Best This Is Sports Center commercial?
Hands down, and I want to write a story about it. This is a dad one. Oh my God, this is a dad one too. It's the Eli Peyton and Archie Manning one where they're kicking each other in the butt and stuff. And then there's this great moment where Archie's walking and he gives this look, which we've all done. It's like this. You don't say anything. That's my favorite. It's the best.
What would your ideal, I have kids now, date night look like?
Oh my God. Well, we go to John Lyons' house for romantic. No, I mean, we like to just go out to a movie and just quiet for 2 hours, hold hands and watch a movie together.
Favorite flavor of ice cream?
I have to say Peachy Paterno to keep my Penn State stripes.
There you go. Would you rather wake up tomorrow with $1 million in your bank account or go back to the age of 5 with all the knowledge you have now?
Oh my God, I'll take the mill. Everybody says the 5-year-old, I bet, but I'm taking the mill.
That's awesome. All right, we've got 7 minutes left. We're on to baseball cards. So I'm going to show you some baseball cards. You tell me what comes to your mind. The first two here are your boy, Pedro Guerrero.
Oh man, I just love that guy. Great hitter. I mean, and now I get to meet him maybe? That's crazy.
That's even better. You're going to post some pictures, I hope.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I just found in my bag the year my dad moved out, he got me a tiny little Pedro Guerrero jersey that says Hockensmith on the back.
That's awesome.
And I still have it. I cannot fit into it with my dad bod. That's
counter number 11, I guess.
Number 11, yeah.
All right, next card. I picked some cool ones because you have the whole collection. So this is a combo Derek Brooks, Paul Wilson card.
Oh, I love those. I love those combo cards. I found a couple. There's a Mike Piazza rookie with 4 guys on it, including Mike Piazza. And, like, I didn't know how I felt about it then, and I don't know how I feel about it now. Like, you kind of don't want – like, by having more than one guy on the card, it increases the likelihood that one of them's good.
You're right.
But it also diminishes. Like, how can I have Paul Wilson underneath Derek Brooks?
Right. Exactly.
Like, who wants that?
This one is interesting. Frank Thomas, but it's kind of that black and white thing you were talking about, the franchise.
Yes. That's a cool card. I don't know if I ever saw that. I do remember Frank Thomas, man. I love that guy. That guy was a beast.
Have you seen him in person? He has the biggest arms of anyone in the entire world.
I know. He's a massive human being.
John Kruk.
Oh, I love John Kruk. That day was so much fun. We actually had a guy that worked at ESPN that I really liked. And he looked like John Kruk, so everybody just called him Kruk all day, and it made me think of John Kruk almost every single day. He was a great announcer too. I really like John Kruk.
And then last one, this is like a gum thin card Ken Griffey Jr. bazooka with his dad. Like,
wow,
the
that's kind of a
comic.
mess. Wow, I don't know if I ever saw that one either. There's no way that's worth anything.
No,
is it?
It's
Okay.
got to be worth like 8 cents.
Right.
All right, so we got 4 minutes left here. The last question, actually, if you could talk about it quick because it's hilarious. You were target practice in 2009 for Gina Carano. They threw you in the ring for an MMA fighter and they just had you be target practice. What was that? And did anything top that?
Well, I told you about the Chuck Liddell leg kick, but yeah, I was doing a thing about Gina Carano, and again, like, it doesn't seem this way now because everybody's in on MMA, but at the time when an ESPN person or a Sports Illustrated or New York Times person paid attention to MMA, it was like a huge moment. So I got to hang out with Gina Carano all day, and she was a mega star at the time. I mean, I just watched The Mandalorian the other night. She's awesome in The Mandalorian. And so I was just standing there at the side of the cage, and somebody said to me, hey, they might have you go in and hold the pads for a minute. And I was like, okay, I wrestled in high school, and we used to box all the time and stuff. So like, I wasn't terrified or anything, but like, holy crap, man, she kicked the pads. They announced me, first of all, in front of Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Right. It was Mauro Ranallo, who's awesome, but he was like, Ryan Hockensmith of ESPN is coming into the cage. And so everybody was like, kick him in the face. And so I was like, oh, this is not off to a great start. And so she kicked me in the face. And it hit the pad, but my hand smashed into my own mouth. And I felt my tooth. It was like bad enough that my tooth was sore for a long time. Like, I'm lucky it didn't get knocked out. But so she kicked me a couple of times, and I sort of I played along, and I sort of like fell over. And then she just like mounted me. She just like threw in hooks. She got behind me, threw in double legs, and just like stretched me out on the ground in jeans in the middle of like July in Madison Square Garden. And all of these guys are just in front of Madison Square Garden yelling like, kill him, so yeah, nothing quite tops that. I had a guy put me in something called the crucifix one time. Boss Rutan is this great fighter. Put me in something called the crucifix. Look it up. It sounds like it would be terrible. It's worse than that.
Oh,
don't allow a former UFC champion to put you in the crucifix.
All right, we have 1:35. So, quick answer: what does baseball mean to you? We ask everybody.
It's still the same thing that it meant a long time ago. It's just such a, like, even with it, sports is a very, like, there's somebody that wins and there's somebody that loses. There is some gray area in football, and judges make terrible decisions in boxing and fighting. But like, baseball seems so clean cut. They play until there's absolutely a winner. There's no polls that determine whether a team is number one or number two. They play it out. So it has like this beautiful, in a world full of like gray area, there's less gray area in the sport. And so I'm like kind of missing that right now. And so it'll always mean that to me. I'll always be drawn to it for that reason.
That's awesome. It's a really great answer. Ryan, so let's see. We're at 11 on the dad counter. That's pretty great. I think the audience agrees you should write a book.
Okay.
This has been 60 minutes of dadness, right?
Yes.
And Ryan, we really appreciate you doing this. We love your story, and we're just excited to read more stuff from you. And yeah, man, I guess we got to get you to come to our dinner. Our New York Pro Scouts dinner, and maybe we'll bring Pedro Guerrero too.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll see everybody on Monday for our next episode, and take care. All right.
See ya.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks.